Good morning, Scott Quimby, CSI Acture. Thanks for joining us today. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, good. Very good. Thank you. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about MITRE and the 2024 results. And we've over the years, if you've listened to us, we periodically have talked about this. So let's get into it. For those of you who don't know who I am, Scott Quimby, Acture, CSI Fishkill office. Been doing this 47 years this month. And I really did start at the beginning of the beginning. I'm a certified information systems security professional, which is the highest vendor independent security certification in the world. When CSI joined Acture, I joined Acture last June, having fun. I said I'm going to talk about MITRE, but there's three really important things I want to say first. So a little deviation to a tech tidbit. One, there's a new attack that's going around. It's happened in the Hudson Valley, and it's becoming quite prevalent. It's the fake CAPTCHA attack. And this is, it's what, 6-7 weeks old now. And it's really gaining steam. This is essentially, the CAPTCHAs, click on the sidewalks, click that you're a human, and we have 8 million of those that we have to do. And so people are getting conditioned just to click on this stuff. And so what the bad guys have done is they've taken that and they've just shoved it out in the world as an attack surface because people are just conditioned to click on things. And so what it does is it pulls down an info stealer, basically, are the ones that I have seen, to capture all your credentials to get in all your stuff. And so I've said over the years, you're being targeted as a school district, you're people that have money, personally identifiable information, confidential information, those people are being targeted even more specifically. And the case that happened was a extremely senior person in a school district in the region. And they were at their desks a little bit after hours, and they clicked on a Cloudflare ad. And that's good that senior people in your school district are thinking about security. The bad news was it was an SEO poisoned, malicious Cloudflare ad. And they clicked on it, it came up with a caption. Now remember, captions tend to be with authentication, and this was just a random web page, and it threw up a CAPTCHA, and so the person clicked on it. And so here you are, center square in the school district, in the middle of Holy of Holies, and down comes the payload. Now the good news, it was a CSEDR or CSEDR with S1 with the Vigilant SOC. And they killed it on contact and isolated it, and the story ended there. But target it right to the Holy Holies, your top tier people. It was a poisoned SEO, and it was the caption. They just click because they always click on. You always click on captions. So a couple things there. One, this is why the FBI says that you should have some sort of ad blocker on. I use AdBlock Plus or Pro. The free one is good, but you should have that because there's so much SEO poisoning in a Google search or whatever, and that's what happened. They ran into a poison link. So block the ads, number one. Number two, obviously having a good EDR solution with a SOC to immediately intervene is a big deal. And your to-do is you got to add that to your security awareness training, that this is a prevalent attack surface that's come out of nowhere. these fake captchas, so you need to get to your people that they need to be very discerning about captchas, that captchas don't normally come up on random web pages. So that's number one. Number two, April 20th, so a month away, a little over a month away. Microsoft has announced in their desire to make you leave WSSs, for all of you who use WSSs either directly or through SCCM or the like, that they are no longer doing, starting on April 20th, they are no longer doing system driver security updates. So they will not push drivers that need updates through WSSs a month from now. That's a big deal because a lot of the attack surface these days is drivers, substituting drivers, down-level drivers, and the like. And so Microsoft with WSSs will no longer be part of that. They say that drivers will be in the Microsoft catalog. That is really annoying. You cannot merge them into WSSs. It's just like they've taken WSSs out. And they want you to move on from WSSs to other things. And they'll still do Windows updates and all that stuff. So that's fine. It's still a supported product. It's supported through Windows Server 2025, but they won't do drivers anymore. So this is a pretty significant hole in the side of the boat. Microsoft does want you to move on to some of their other patching solutions, which, by the way, still do the system drivers. We'll be talking about that next month, but that's a heads up for you that you got a serious hole in the side of the boat coming if you're a WSSs patching site. And you have to start thinking about making your move to one of these other platforms. So more on that next month. The final one is there's three VMware ESXi 0-day issues going on right now with some active attacks and the like. If you're a VMware patch client, then we probably have already gotten to you. You know, if you're a Paladin client, we've probably already mailed, you know, our general mailings we've done in terms of that issue. If you haven't heard that, you really need to fix that. We can certainly help you with that. Reach out to Christina and get that done. So that's my little deviation. I do have a question I'd like to ask you, which has nothing to do with our topic other than directly, other than some things we're thinking about. If you have one of these licenses in your district, could you just raise your hand so Lisa can count? Just because we're trying to figure out some things, and you know, we're looking for specific licenses that see how much of these things. So if any of these belong to you, just raise your hand and let Lisa do the count.
Seeing two so far.
All right. Well, I
Three.
know more than two out there, but
Four.
all right. Well, all right. I'm going to move into the main stuff now, but if you do have that, just reach out because we're playing with some things that might be interesting for you. So here we are. What is EDR? Most of you know this, but for the benefits of those that are new to this or haven't kind of hung out with us before, EDR, endpoint detection and response. It's kind of the next generation antivirus. And basically it combines monitoring with threat detections, with response, with ability to have visibility potentially beyond your endpoint, you know, kind of looking around corners, looking through your network, letting the endpoints talk to each other about what they're seeing, share information. So that's the basis of what we're going to be talking about in bulk today. The MITRE attack with the weird attack, that's how they do it. Basically, we have this CSF, and this CSF says, we're trying to adhere to policies and guidelines and certain frameworks of how we do things, and they have their framework. Well, in the same spirit as NIST, MITRE has basically taken the basics of how attackers attack, and they've put it in a framework and a category. And whatever you're doing for security, if you're talking to anyone, everyone tries to put whatever's going on in the framework of MITRE. So it doesn't matter if you're SentinelOne or CrowdStrike or Microsoft or Trend or Cisco, or it really doesn't matter. It's everybody does this. If you subscribe to a SOC, they put it in a MITRE framework. Everybody puts it in a MITRE framework. It is the gold standard as to how are people attacking, what are the categories, and also where do we look? How do we know an attack when we see it, right? And so that's it. They take the tactics, and they put that in. They take the techniques, how they get what they want. They take the sub techniques. If they get A, what do they do for B? They take the procedures and they organize it into this framework. And no matter who you're talking to or ever will talk to about security, it will always be in the MITRE framework. If they don't know what this is, run away. And it's just how everyone operates. Now, this eye chart is all the categories and all the frameworks. All right, and you can go out. There's a link in here. Lisa has the PDF, and Eric and Nick have the PDF. So wherever you are, they can get that to you, and there's a link to go read this. Now, if we look at some of the categories in that eye chart, reconnaissance, how do they figure out what they want? How do they get access? How do they execute? How do they achieve persistence? Privilege escalation, which is the biggie. How do they avoid whatever you're doing, living off the land? A couple others: credentials, discovery, move across, collection, command and control, which is, remote access tool. How do we get data out? What does it do for us? So, and then if you look in these categories, there's all these subcategories. And, if you go through this is stuff you've heard, you've read before. So that's kind of the framework, is that everybody puts it in this framework. And when stuff lights up in these categories, that's where the SOC or the EDR or whatever you have says, is this a thing, right? Is this a legitimate use, or is this an attack? And so that's really how it goes. Now, they've been doing this for years and years and years. And the thing about the MITRE test is MITRE isn't really saying, well, it isn't at all saying, this guy's better than that guy. This product's better than that product. What they do is they put a framework together, and they put a simulation of some sort of malware attack or something. And then what they do is they invite these vendors to come in and run their tools against the attack and just see how they do. And now what happens is all the vendors go, well, this is the closest thing we have to comparing, a SentinelOne to a Sophos, to a CrowdStrike, to a Cisco, SecureX, to whatever, right? It's the closest thing we have, like to like, testing, how did you do? The problem MITRE has figured out is what's happened is a lot of vendors have been trying to game the system. And And the previous tests were pretty simple. They would pick one thing and they say test against that. It's generally something that's been out for a long time. So it's not a new thing. And then, but they would allow people to literally stop the test, rewrite their detection code up to 2 times, and then start the test over again. Or they would allow people to stop the test, bring in a whole lot of extra equipment, which wasn't just their EDR client, set up all this extra stuff, which, most people weren't buying at the same time as, the EDR client, and then turn on the test and then declare victory. And you see all this marketing spin. Oh, we were perfect. But if you have to rewrite your code to be perfect of something that's out a couple of years, that's like an open book test. Hi, I already have the answer. I've looked it up. Gee, how smart am I? So they were kind of on to that. So they've totally changed the test. And I think this is the fairest test ever offered in our industry. Basically, instead of 2 days of testing, it's now 6 days. And instead of having the vendor's engineer run the test, who was super, super, aware of everything, the MITRE staff had to run the test for each vendor, and the vendor had to train the staff in the tool set. So the lead engineer couldn't sit there and declare victory. You had to teach one of the MITRE staff to run your tool. Now you still could consult with them, in terms of what am I seeing, just like you would call us or another vendor and say, hey, this is my situation. They documented all the delays, equipment additions, whatever, to really make them stand out that, hey, the test wasn't clean. And then they said, well, you know what? We don't really have one threat. We have a variety of threats on a variety of platforms. So instead of having the Windows threat du jour, what they said was, we're going to have 3 tests. One, North Korea is like going crazy on Macs and Mac-based attacks. I mean, they're like the Mac guys, and they're really being successful. So if you're Macs and you don't have protection, that's not a good place to be. And so they said, okay, test number 1 is we're going to do, North Korea's finest Mac test. Then they said, Linux, huge attack surface. We're going to do the CLOP against Linux. And then number 3, we're going to go for ransomware, lockbit, mainline stuff that's going around. We're not going to just go 3 years ago, Torla was a thing. And that's going to be our test. You're going to have to test against all 3 platforms. Well, that immediately, there were a whole lot of vendors that can't do all 3 platforms, that only do Windows and the like. So now there's, blank spots. And again, what do you like? You like one console to see all your stuff, to be able to manage all your stuff, as opposed to 3 different vendors that do 3 different ways, 3 different consoles. So they're like, that's the world. People have diverse platforms. They need protection. How do you do against that? And then the other thing that happened is they caught people, because it was just a static test. People would just turn off PowerShell and on the network and then declare victory because they didn't have to think about PowerShell because they turned it off. Well, we know we can't really turn it off. Many of us need those things running for certain stuff. So they were like, that's not really a real world. And so what they did is they simulated actual workloads. So the vendor was not allowed to just turn off parts of the network, and that the vendor was forced into looking through the noise and filtering out real workloads versus malicious workloads, because that's how you and I work. We're on networks right now where they're real people doing real things, and we have to be able to protect in that framework without blowing up our users by misdiagnosing stuff or turning off major functionality things. So that was the test. Now, what happened? Sentinel-1, once again, won the test. And Sentinel-1's philosophy, if you haven't heard it before, is they're like, we don't bring any of this extra stuff. We don't rewrite our code. We, if you're being attacked at 1 o'clock in the morning on a holiday weekend, it's our tool with the SOC, if you're subscribing, against the bad guys. And it's not like, bad guys, please stop while we, rewrite our code so we can find you. Bad guys, please stop so I can install extra stuff. They're like, every year they just come, they plop their agent down, they say, that's it, we're done, whatever happens, happens. And, they've got a winning streak going back a long way. There were 80 possible steps. They saw 80. They performed consistently well across all 3 platforms. One thing many people don't realize is Sentinel-1 is the top thing for Macs. They really got that nailed down. Now, the biggie is it was exponentially quieter with alerts than most of the vendors. Now, Palo Alto Cortex, which I know Brewster has, last year it was insane. It scored really well, but it was insane in terms of amount of noise. Substantially quieter Palo is this year. They did apparently a lot of work on that. But some of the noise alert differentiation between Sentinel-1 and Microsoft or Trend or Cisco is really out of control. Because you go back to, okay, it's great you found that, but if I'm overwhelmed with an ocean of noise, how do I, as a mere human, how do I know? The other weird thing was, CrowdStrike had all their problems, as everyone knows by now, but they didn't participate at all. And I guess their meltdown just got them distracted, because I was stunned by that, is that they were not in the test. My belief is that CrowdStrike would have done quite well, right? Real CrowdStrike. So a couple things. One, you can go out, again, these links are in the PDF you can get from Eric or Nick or Lisa. And you can go out and you can watch Sentinel-1's full presentation on this, but I kind of summarized it. But you can also just go out to this link here, which I have up, and you can basically compare up to 3 EDRs side by side. So you can compare Sentinel-1 to Trend to Cisco or whatever floats your boat. Now, what do I think of this? What we've been doing with CSCDR with Sentinel-1 Complete continues to be best of breed in terms of finding the most stuff, having the least noise, giving you the most compelling or most identifiable, this is a thing, kind of weeding through all that stuff. The fact that it can do that across 3 is pretty impressive. So the noise is really the problem. It's great that some of these products are doing really well, but how do I deal with that? The honest answer in that is, if you have a SOC with your EDR, the SOC has the ability to filter out the noise. The cleaner is always better for everyone, but in terms of some of these noise streams, a real SOC can kind of mitigate that, so us humans can just live and know what to do. So the thing that's happening, and just to be perfectly honest, it happened in antivirus, that as the years go on, we're seeing flattening in terms of similar results. So in terms of actual products, the differences between the high-end EDR products are not as profound as they were once were. Everybody's figured out what everyone else is doing. This is what happened in antivirus as well. That is what's going on. So then it's like, okay, well, how do I deal with the noise? And again, a SOC would deal with the noise. Here's an example. So in one of the tests, Sentinel-1, 71 alerts. Palo 319, which is down substantially from last year. Microsoft, ATP, Windows Defender for Business, 577. Trend Micro, 64,804, right? Oh my gosh, how am I supposed to deal with that? A SOC, that's how you deal with it. Here's the other one, just to show the flattening, right? Sentinel-1, 80-80, Palo 80-80, Trend up substantially, 78 out of 80. Microsoft hanging where it was last couple of years, 76 out of 80. So in the neighborhood of perfection. That's honestly what's going on. So kind of taking this along, some thoughts. Don't, if you're still buying anything, anyone on this call that's buying commercial antivirus, you should go with Windows security over 1 billion endpoints and then put a SOC on top of that as the minimum. Windows security is rated as good as anybody in that space, but you really want an EDR solution on top of that. Now, if any of you are out there using Sentinel-1 Core, my advice to you is you need to, all these tests I'm showing you are based on Complete or Falcon Enterprise Pro if they were on the list, or Microsoft Windows Defender for Business, the high-end ATP stuff. And that's where you really need to go. And that's whatever your product is, you need to go towards the top. And again, you start with servers, holy of holy people working with money, confidential information, personal information, and then everyone else with the goal of no gaps. That's our design. Whatever you're doing, whatever you bought into, that's the design. You need to move away from these low-end products. They're very good at, very bad thing.exe, but they're not looking around corners. They're not doing the advanced stuff that these advanced threats need. Again, same thing. If you're in CrowdStrike, you need to get to the high end. So that's that. No gaps. That's the important thing, to try to get to no gaps in terms of endpoint protection. The other thing is, we went through a period of time where we would double up products because one product did this, the other product did that. The days of that, everything's, again, with this flattening, everything's kind of getting covered. So if you're one of our clients that are doing Sentinel-1 and Huntress together, either move Huntress downstream to machines that don't have Sentinel-1, or take that out and put the money either into more agents or into a SOC. It's just makes more financial sense and more protection sense. Max need ER2. Again, North Korea is going nuts on this. Linux, same thing. Now we do have Linux appliances and stuff where we're kind of freaky about touching that, and I get that. So, but that is a major attack surface. Again, SOCs will filter out the noise on some of those other products that we couldn't do on our own. We want to force the attackers to be as noisy as they can on our networks. So when they do their reconnaissance and try to move around, hopefully one of our layers of protection is gonna take it. I say this all the time, the more work they have to do, the more likely they'll just be found or disengage because they get frustrated, right? We're not getting attacked by Russian, China state actors. We're getting attacked by ransomware as a service for the most part, looking for crimes of opportunity for money and personal information. And if you're really hard to hack and the like, they're people way dumber than you, right? You guys have for the most part done a really good job of upping your games, and they don't want to work. They want money. And the other thing is, every case still undefeated on this one. When faced with an active defense, when they see there is an active defense in your network and they hit it, they disengage. Too much like work. They don't want to work. They want the quick grab. And the term used in the industry of what we want, I always say layers of security. They have a nice term now called defense in depth. And it's basically the same thing. It's basically looking at all these different levels of protection with users with security awareness training being part of that, all from different perspectives, all from different points of view, in hopes that if one thing misses it, the next thing, the next level will get it, right? And the ultimate goal of eliminate. The term we use is dwell time. We don't want people dwelling in our network. And also with all this data exfiltration, we don't want people dwelling where they could be taking the data and not, leaving ransomware or whatever. And we want to see them as soon as they hit the ground. Yes, do you have a question, Greg, or is that from before? I just saw that. I apologize. I'm not paying attention. I saw Greg's hand. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's from earlier.
Okay, all right. All good. All right. Some people don't realize this, but I just point this out again. There's really two types of socks. The first level sock, everyone absolutely should have these days, which are the EDR socks. So you buy Sentinel-1 and you get the Vigilant sock or what have you. And that's the sock basically focused on the endpoint. And those are the people that are 24/7, 365, very bad thing.exe lands on them. There's some sort of lateral movement, past the hash, those type things. Those are the guys that are looking at that, right? They're not looking at your firewalls. They're not looking at syslog. They're not looking at anything but what the EDRs are saying. And they're the guys that in the middle of the night are going to be the first line to fight whatever's trying to get in your stuff. And that's really important. Everybody really needs that level of oversight, because hacker hours, nights, weekends, holidays. So that's that. But what they're not doing is they're not doing the overall network. What's going on with the firewall? What's going on in between? What's going on across, what are the switches saying? What is all that syslog data saying? Potentially looking for living off the land or data exfiltration or other stuff. They're the frontline defense. Attackers came in your network to get someplace to do something, and sooner or later they're going to try to get someplace that hopefully you have well defended with a EDR, with a EDR SOC behind it. That's that. The other one is the 24/7, 365 oversight. That in one place people get confused is, well, then, I don't need the lower level of SOC. No, that's not the case. You actually, it's both and, because the first SOC, the EDR SOC, is going to be the ones that are out there actively fighting whatever came in. But the second SOC is going to use that telemetry to know what's going on in the overall health of the network. And it's going to be correlating that with the firewall, with all the syslog from firewalls and switches and AD audit and on and on, to get a picture of the overall network and not just look for endpoints, but look for data exfiltration where they haven't really put a payload, to look for, weird people from Serbia trying to come through the network, firewall changes and the like. So those are the two, and it's really a both and more people are, incorporating both of these, and we can certainly talk to you about that. So I wanted to point that out. And that, I think, was what I really had today, kind of short and sweet. If people have questions, happy to answer them. We got two things coming up soon. We're doing our in-person tech talk, April 1st in Fishkill, the last one of the year in person, all morning. We'll feed you breakfast, we'll feed you lunch. A lot of good topics going on. We're going to talk about PoE power. We're going to talk about VPN changes with attacks we're seeing. We're going to talk about some of that Windows update stuff. Lot of good things. Lisa has a full agenda.
Yes,
And then we're also, for the first time, taking the show north to taking the show north to Albany, to the Desmond, and doing it up there for the northern groups. So that's that. Mike has a question.
yes, he does. He said, just to clarify, are you recommending either Cyber Sentinel or Huntress, and then suggesting possibly pushing Huntress downstream?
Well, I think, you want to stick with the CSEDRS1 complete as far as you can in the enterprise. The question becomes, I don't think there's tremendous value. There's still some value, but it's incremental, really, in terms of, like, Huntress will tell you those. I see people with password files on their desk, stuff like that. But in terms of protection, I don't really think Huntress on top of S1 is really worth it anymore. So I would leave S1 there, and if you have unprotected or less protected stuff downstream where you can't get S1 on yet, you can't afford it, then I would put Huntress there, or just save the money and put it into the SOC or other tools. So that just goes back to how much coverage do you have. But yeah, I think what's happened with S1 with deep vigilance has filled the gaps. And what we've been seeing, Christina and I have been seeing in recent events, we're getting identical results. We never get something in Huntress we don't get in S1. But like the last time we had an alert, S1 was an hour sooner in terms of response. Because remember, Huntress goes through the little computer, is it a thing, whatever, and then if it think it's a thing, then it goes to a live analyst, and then they alert. So that's it. Again, register for Tech Talk, and back to the beginning of our story, my little segue out of what we were talking about. The fake CAPTCHA, you got to get on top of this from security awareness. This is a real thing. It's a hot attack surface now. The Windows update thing, if you're a WSDS site, an SCCM site, you need a plan how to go forward. Now, CyberCNS does show drivers, but again, it's not the same as WSDS automatic stuff. So Microsoft has a roadmap there, but I think it's going to be a thing for the summer that people are going to have to deal with. And then this VMware thing. If you're one of the mains people who already dealt with it, if you're not, a lot of you, especially local to us, in Fishkill, we've already had those conversations and the like, but if you're someplace else and you haven't dealt with it, we're happy to help you. And with that, I think I'm done. So I hope you got some good stuff out of it. Lisa, Eric, and Nick have the PDF. Other questions, certainly reach out. And with that, I guess thanks and have a wonderful day. Thanks for spending time.